Check in with Patrick Saunders of the Denver Post. He covers the Rockies and Major League Baseball, and he's with us on Skype. Patrick, wondering if you've run into Troy Tulowitzki at all today, if you've learned anything new about whether or not Tulo will go to the Rockies management and demand a trade.
Les, I haven't heard anything yet. Obviously I talked to Troy yesterday. Won't see him again until Clubhouse. The issue I think now is how they do spin this. How do they deal with this without it hanging over their heads forever? I think that's the issue facing them right now.
I thought that Troy's comments were absolutely spot on when he said, this game is hard enough, he told you. This game's hard enough. I'm paraphrasing. This game is hard enough. I don't want this hanging over my head every day when I go to the ballpark. And, of course, in the past, as you pointed out, he has met with his agent when he goes to the West Coast. I mean, there's nothing unusual about that. But because this report has come up and his agent's involved in it, that certainly it has to be something he's involved with, and it's odd that the owner of the team or the general manager have not addressed the reports.
Well, yeah, and you guys know the way this game works, Woody. I mean, Paul Cohen and Joel Sherman, the guy from the New York Post, are pretty tight. Paul Cohen doesn't talk to a lot of people, including me. He has not returned my calls. But basically, there's no way this would have gotten out there if Tulo and Paul Cohen didn't want it out there. So this is the first step to test the waters to see how this is going to play out. There's no question about that. And, I mean, if they didn't want this hanging over their heads, it wouldn't be out there now. They would have managed this differently. And Tulo was great to me yesterday talking about it. Some of it was off the record, but it's clear to me that this issue is coming to a head.
Patrick, have you talked with anybody in management with the Rockies, or any players, or the manager, anybody, and what's their reaction to this report that's come out over the last 24 hours?
Yeah, I have talked to a few people, mostly background off the record type stuff, guys. There's a sense that it's just one more frustration, one more thing that they have to deal with, which is compounding the losing. I do sense there are some teammates of Tulo's who don't blame him one bit. There are other younger players who don't know Tulo that well, who are basically, whatever happens, happens. I'm just trying to make my way in the major leagues. But my general sense is there's no anger there. It's just a sense of frustration, and this is just another part of the iceberg.
Patrick, is this strictly about wins and losses for Tulo, or are there possibly other issues?
Les, I think it's 90%. It's got to be wins and losses. I think it's not fair to say Tulo doesn't like Colorado, doesn't like Denver, etc. I think he really does. I've talked to him enough to know that he likes playing in Colorado. He likes the fan base. He would like to have it be the place he goes or stays for his career, but he sees no hope. This is my opinion. He doesn't see any hope. He doesn't see any change. I mean, they've averaged 93 losses over the last 4 years. They're not going anywhere. And Tulo's 30 years old. You know what? And he wants to make the most of his skills. And right now, he can't.
All Live Guests brought to you by Papa John's, the official sponsor of, ironically, the Colorado Rockies. The day after every Rockies win, get 50% off your regular menu price online order at papajohns.com. Make sure you use the promo code ROXWIN, ROXWIN.
And we're going to change it after the next loss to Rocks Come Close. Try hard. Let's advance. Let's advance the story we've been talking about. Do you think the Mets would be, if this were to happen, do you think the Mets are the primary target? The story came out in the New York Post. They've been clawing to get Troy Tulowitzki since last offseason. Les has brought up the St. Louis Cardinals, the New York Yankees, the Boston Red Sox. How would you put them in order of who you think the Rockies should make as a trade partner if it happens?
Well, if I was the Rockies and I was seriously going to look at, shipping Tulo soon or to the trade deadline, I think you're right, Woody. I think I'd go with New York because They already have a fairly deep starting staff, but more than that, they have pitching prospects. And I think that would be the place to go. I've talked to a couple of people in New York, and there's conflicting reports as to whether the Mets would truly be, at this point, be into getting Tulo. But a shortstop of Tulo's caliber really might put them over the top because they're having a really good season right now. They could use his expertise on the field and the firepower. The Yankees, I don't see it right now. I just don't see it. And I bet deep down in his heart, if Tulo was to be real about it, St. Louis is where he would want to go, I think. But I don't necessarily think that's where he'll end up. I would put the Mets as a front runner right now.
Patrick, talk to me about compliance here. Talk to me about Major League Baseball scheduling. Can you make a trade any time now up until the July 31st deadline without having to put a player through waivers first?
Yes, I believe you can, Les. Right now, it's just teams don't do it. But yeah, you could do it now. It's later on that waivers and everything gets involved. You just don't see it that often. I mean, you'll see trades into spring training sometimes. Nothing really happened because it was such an active winter season. But yeah, it could happen sooner rather than later.
Let's turn to the Rockies and their continued miseries. 10 straight now. Looked like last night they had a legitimate chance. They got a good effort out of Cal Kindred for the first time since opening day. And then they got beat basically by a double by a guy hitting below 150. And we can't even call that below the Mendoza line. We'll call that below the Drew Stubbs line. How about that? You knew I had to bring that up.
Can't let it go,
you can't let it go.
Struck out 3 times on Sunday. I saw that. What is it going to take? I mean, I looked at it last week when I wrote about him, and I thought this could go into the end of this road trip because they've got to face Clayton Kershaw again. The Angels are a good team. The record doesn't totally indicate that. The Dodgers are a great team, and the starter Sunday is some guy named TBD against Zach Greinke, who's undefeated. Do you see this lasting through the week?
You know what? It really could. It really could. And the all-time record for consecutive losses for the Rockies was 13 back in their inaugural season. They have not lost 10 straight in a decade. It was 2005 was the last time, my first year on the beat, ironically. But you know what? I mean, I don't want it to go to 13 or 14 games, but it's possible that could happen. And if it does happen, you know, guys, what's going to happen to everything? I mean, I'm talking Walt Weiss. I'm talking Dick Monfort. What will he do? It's a real mess right now. And I'll tell you what, when I went to that clubhouse last night, you guys have been in losing clubhouses before. This is about as bad as I've seen it. And I went up to talk to Betancourt, of course, who gave up the loss. And Rafi is one of the class acts in baseball. And he waved me away, basically saying, no, I'm not talking tonight. And when it gets to that point, when some of your go-to guys are getting to that level, you know things are bad. And Walt right now, you know, bless his heart, he is he's a fighter, but boy, does he look like he's down in the dumps right now too. It's just an ugly scene right now.
I saw him go to the mound last night, and I thought if he took his cap off, he's bald, but his hair, if he had hair now, would be totally gray. He looked like a beat man when he went to the mound to make the pitching change. So I know this I said yesterday, he's a competitor, he's a fighter. He's not a guy that's going to give up. But
I think he's going to walk past the mound next time and just keep going and walk out the left field bullpen and just into the parking lot and see you later.
Well, you know, the problem, guys, is, you know, and let's face it, Walt is not X's and O's wise, is not the premier manager in the majors. He has flaws like everybody, like all of us. But he's not a quitter. But truthfully, what are you going to do when the pitching staff, I mean, for God's sakes, you finally get a decent start for the, third time all year, the pitcher doesn't walk anybody, gets in the 7th inning. They get 5 hits, and then one of their reliable relievers can't close the door. I mean, what are you going to do? He didn't do anything wrong. There was nothing for him to do except maybe hitting the slumping Carver in the 3rd position, which was kind of a head scratcher a little bit. But
yeah, Patrick, this is not Walt's doing. You can't blame
No.
Walt Weiss for what's going on there. Hey, we really appreciate your time. Love the palm trees behind you there.
Oh, I thought they were coming out of his ears.
Usually you say, wish you were here. No, we wish we were there. Patrick, really appreciate your time, and we'll read your stuff online and in the Post tomorrow morning. Thanks, Patrick.
okay, guys, thank you.
Patrick Saunders of the
Appreciate it.
Denver Post.